Today, my guest is Professor Esteban García-Canal. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Esteban as a person. Professor García-Canal is a thought leader and an esteemed scholar. And then finally, as a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I'll keep my review very short. Professor García-Canal is the author of more than 80 monograms and journal articles. He is the co-author of the widely recognized books such as Emerging Markets Rule and The New Multinationals, Spanish Firms in a Global Context with Mauro Guillén, among several others. His research interests lie at the intersection of interorganizational relations, organizational economics, and international management. He is or has been on editorial boards of international journals such as JIBS and Management International Review. He quite often appears on international media outlets. And thank you, Esteban, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, and congratulations for this initiative. Yeah.
First question, what did you want to become when you were a child?
Let me see. Well, when I was a child, I wanted to be a football player, a tennis player, a race driver, but it wasn't until I completed my, my early years at the university when I wanted to be a university professor or starting a PhD. At that time, I already have realized that, I couldn't earn my living in playing any sport,
Can you pinpoint the earliest moment of awareness between domestic versus foreign?
Yes. I was born in Spain in 1965. So Spain didn't enter into the European Economic Community until 1986, fully effective in 1991. So, during my childhood, my adolescence, Spanish people couldn't travel freely across Europe as other Europeans could do. We have to pay duties for imported goods, which were a bit better than local products. So that makes you fully aware of the implications of borders, domestic and international. And interestingly, the protection that Spanish companies had took a toll on their competitiveness when they enter into we enter into the European Economic Community, and they have to compete with more developed companies. Yeah.
Sure.
So fully aware of the differences since my early years. Yeah.
And how did you choose academia?
Academia, general or
yeah.
Well, I think that I wanted to know more. It's like I had the impression that my professors were not telling me everything I had to know. So I wanted to study more. I think that I have a lot of criticism capabilities, and it's like I thought that I could use them in this job.
And about your international business focus, how did you develop these?
Yeah, I entered into the field of FB gradually. My first step was during my dissertation. I chose strategic alliances as the main topic of my dissertation. And I studied then how Spanish companies that were in a difficult situation because what I told you before about the competitiveness, were using alliances as a means to expand abroad. Interestingly, a few years later, in the second half of the 1990s, Spanish companies started to invest heavily abroad, in Latin America, but in Europe, and so the pattern that we were observing, we label it accelerated internationalization. And interestingly, during these years, I had a lot of executive education activity in Latin America, so I have a privileged witness of the rise of the multilatinas, the multinationals from Latin America. So extending the research line to emerging markets was, a natural. So that's in these 3 steps. That's how I landed, in the IB field. No, I see myself, as you told in the introduction, as a professor who is in the intersection between strategy, economics, an IB. No, so it's like in the fields like corporate strategy, global strategy. You know, so
Perfect. About what is something not on your CV that people might find interesting?
Well, as I told you before, I cannot earn my living playing sports, but I do play sports. I play tennis every day. It's part of my daily routine. I'm a fan of the sport, and you know, it's a good way for me for keeping myself fit, not only physically but also mentally. You know, you know, I usually play at middays, and it's a good you know, daily routine for me. Yeah.
Very good. Regrets. Have you got any regrets?
Well, I made a lot of mistakes, you know, but I do not have, you know, special regrets for not doing something. You know, it's like, you know, what I like who I am, and I like where I am right now, and this is the, you know, this is the consequence of all of the choices I've made, even though some of them were mistakes. So I don't look back, especially, you know, in regret.
If you stop doing what you're doing today, what would you do next? What's the second best career alternative path for you?
Well, it's a difficult question. You know, I'm very comfortable doing what I do right now. Consultancy is an option, or is very close to what I do right now. If consultancy is not an option, you know, I could be a journalist, you know, a research journalist analyzing, you know, the general topics of politics, economics, business, you know, things like that. You know. Or even
Okay.
a sport journalist will be fantastic, you know, covering the main events, the Super Bowl, Wimbledon, things like that.
What are you most proud of?
Well, I'm satisfied with my career, as I told you, but I like to believe that the best work is yet to come, you know. So I'm looking for the next big thing. So I hope that when I retire, if I ever do, my best work, the thing that I'm most proud of, will be something not already started. Yeah.
Okay. Let's switch for the sake of time. Let's switch to research. Say you're stranded in a small village and locals don't know anything about you. They're curious. How do you explain your research and why your research is important to people who don't read your work regularly?
Well, I think that the common line between my work is to identify the drivers of firm growth, especially firm growth, especially how firms can speed up the internationalization process through R&D, alliances, acquisitions, or even through no market strategies. Well, I think that this is an important topic because in the business world, as you know, you either grow or you die. And you know, the interesting thing of my research, in my opinion, is that I have studied companies that are not the most advanced in the world. So even companies not in the best situation can grow in an accelerated way with a right strategy based on alliances, acquisitions, or no-market strategies.
Right.
I hope that people find this interesting.
Of course they do. So, looking back at IB research, international strategy research, what are some of the things that have been neglected or omitted? Some of the concepts, contexts that we should have covered more of?
Well, I think that a lot of smart people, brilliant people have done a lot of work in the IB field. So it's becoming more and more difficult to find new topics, and especially to find, you know, variables that are easy to analyze, because if they were easy to analyze, then the people that preceded us have been already dealt with them. No? So I think that the omitted variables and the opportunities for doing research are maybe in the boundaries of the field. I think that, you know, variables related to institutions, political connections, no market strategies are important variables nowadays. Mostly, if we take into account that globalization has its ups and downs. Now I think that we are in a down stage. New companies and new countries are starting to appear in the global arena, especially Africa, but they have political tensions. So these variables of no market strategies, political strategies are becoming more and more important, and a lot of work needs to be done. The thing is that these variables are difficult to measure, and it's like a lot of thinking is needed in order to find the right research setting to deal with them, in my opinion.
Can I ask you something about the book you did with Mauro Guillén? And,
of course,
how is that book going to be? Can you talk about the relevance of the book in a world with increased nationalism, increased protectionist policies? How is it going to be impacting the multinationals?
Well, in that book, we have a chapter entitled Embrace Chaos. It's like one of the main ideas coming from our research is that emerging market multinationals are more used to deal with chaotic environments, with surviving in countries with poor institutions. So, it's like we can learn about what they did when they expanded abroad, maybe taking advantage, if we can use this word, of the knowledge they have dealing with in countries with poor institutions. So that's the important thing that in the literature on emerging markets multinationals appear. It's like you have to be able to survive and to thrive and to make profits not only in developed countries with the right institutions, with clear property rights. You have to be able to survive in countries with poor institutions.
Sure. About creativity in scholarship, about coming up with interesting ideas, interesting places to test these ideas. Where do these creative ideas come to you?
Well, I don't know if I have had in my life a lot of creative ideas, but I try to be open to I had to read a lot, I have my PhD was in economics and business. I'm some sort of organizational economist with a focus also on strategy. I try to, gain insights for different disciplines, and it's like I try to integrate these ideas in a consistent way. And I don't know if I'm successful at doing it, but I try to integrate these ideas in order to develop frameworks with predictive capacity.
Okay.
That's I think that I have my, for instance, two these Nobel Prizes, which are Ronald Coase and Herbert Simon. It's two classics, and they have been, they have changed the 20th century. How do research on management and economics, and they are a perfect example of what creative thinkers are.
Sure. So, I mean, if we can bet on the future and say, the next 5 to 10 years in research is going to be dominated by such and such questions, what would those be? What would be the biggest questions of the next decade?
Yeah. Well, one of them, I already told you, I think that, no-market strategies, institutions, political connections are an important research line because of what I told you before, because, the global environment is not homogeneous, and there are tensions, and companies need to be able to deal with them. A second important research line is the role of digital platforms in international business. It's like, I think that what we have seen so far about digital platforms is just the tip of an iceberg. They are obviously a means for integrating markets, is a means for, they are a means for reaching customers difficult to contact in any other way. But, it's like the use of social networks and digital platforms by new generations imply that they need to get a direct touch with the companies whose products they buy. So they want a direct touch, they want more information. And this is, for me, a paradigm shift. So I think that, in this field, we're going to see a lot of developments, because the business landscape is already transformed very quickly by them.
True.
So this will be my two bets.
About the evolution of IB scholarship, how was it in the past when you were starting out in the program, and now how is it taking shape?
Well, what I like the most about the IB field and especially the IB community is that it's a very open community. It's like it's not like other disciplines which are more, uniform, monolithic. People in the IB community are more open to new ideas coming from other disciplines like sociology, economics, obviously, and political science, for instance. And they are more open to to people from different countries. Obviously, if there is a community that should be open, is the community of international business. But this openness, I think that was a key factor of the recent development of the field, which helped to remove the thoughts that maybe the field was in crisis. I think that the future of IB is as a field is more clear than a few decades ago because of the openness of the field, I think.
Can we talk about advice portion, the mentoring portion? When you were going through the program, where did you get your PhD?
I get my PhD from the University of Oviedo, but I did the coursework in the University of Navarra. So it's like, but for administrative reasons, I completed my university, my degree in Oviedo, but the PhD coursework was done there. So for me, it was a good platform to learn new ideas and to know very interesting people. Yeah.
And what was the best advice you received from your mentor?
Well, the best advice I received was that, among other things, is that when I was doing my PhD, I'm going to be the guy that knows more about the topic in the world. I believe that, it's not always true that if you spend, I don't know, 2-3 years studying a lot about a topic, you become an expert. So this advice made me have the ambition really to sell my ideas outside and publish in English and so on and so forth. And being involved in a bigger community than the community of professors in Spain. Yeah.
Esteban, you've seen many young scholars or PhD students early on in their career. Most people make the same common mistakes. In your opinion, what are these common mistakes that young colleagues?
Yeah. Well, one mistake is working on your own. You have to be open to work with others. Not only your advisor, you have to look for co-authors that enrich your research. It's like I have been extremely lucky to work with a lot of co-authors. You talk about Mauro, but these co-authors are friends of mine. So it's like the journey is shorter, easier, and funnier with co-authors. No? Focusing now in the IB field, I think that you know, a mistake that's not very frequent, but I have seen in several people, is to think that all of the cross-country differences between firms and across countries are the consequence of culture. You know, it's like culture is an important factor, but doesn't explain everything. You know, it's like recent research shows that, you know, at the end of the day, the behavior of people and the behavior of firms are also conditioned by institutions and incentives. So, you know, you don't need to think that culture is the cause of all of the differences that you're seeing. And perhaps another mistake, which is also important, is the last one, but not the least, you know, is the least important, is that quantity can compensate the lack of quality, you know, in terms of the production of your research. It's better to have a top journal than, you know, average, a lot of publications in an average journal. And I have been, for instance, the head of the Committee for Research Grants in Spain. And I've seen recently several CVs in which you see guys with a lot of publications, usually average or under average publications, but you feel, well, this guy hasn't had the time to be involved in all of this research. So it's like a red flag alert. So it's like the advice will be, don't get obsessed with quantity, think about quality. No? That's maybe
so this institution that you're talking about, research institution that you are involved in. So what's the criteria for giving grants or approving research?
Obviously, the criteria is the highest quality of your research. If you have a publication in a top journal, this is what makes different. You know, the research grants are you know, have the are given just to help you to achieve ambitious goals. No, if it doesn't make sense to, I don't know, to subsidize a research which is going to publish, be published without impact. No? That's,
sure. About the skills or toolbox that you would suggest PhD students to develop going forward, in your opinion, what's going to be the most useful tools in the toolbox for doing international strategy research on MNCs, multinationals? What's going to be the most appropriate tool set?
Well, obviously, it's very important to have a solid background on theory and methods. But I think that, you know, the most important thing is to be able to identify, you know, research topics that have a potential for future development. I mean, it's like, you know, the Boston Consulting Group matrix of market share and growth potential, no? Things like that. So you have to be able to classify research lines according to the, you know, the potential impact nowadays and the potential impact in the future. It's like you have to go for a star research line and not to a dog research line, because you can do an excellent research on a topic that nobody is interested in. So this is going to give you less impact. So you, I mean, you know, it's like you have to focus on research lines with future, and to be able maybe to integrate them in wider and more interesting research lines. For instance, I was very successful, and I thank my advisor for leading me to this way, to focus on strategic alliances, which was a field that was emerging, and now it's a mainstream topic in the literature. But in the 1980s, I started my PhD in 1988, and you know, the number of papers on this topic were very reduced. Nowadays, you know, a huge number of papers have been published.
Sure.
it's extremely important to catch a wave, you know, or to catch a wave of a research line with future potential for development.
Well, what's your perspective on, I mean, you did mention about executive MBA, right? What's your perspective on talking to executives about the research you're doing, and how do you communicate with them?
Obviously, you know, this is an important question. You know, it's like executives are not always interested in everything that we do. You know, it's like, for instance, I've been teaching executive courses on alliances. So this is not, obviously, I'm not talking only about the result of my research. What I try to do is to find, you know, like conceptual frameworks that are useful for them for making decisions. So it's like you have to focus on the implications for management practice and for management decisions. But, you know, obviously 100% of what we do in terms of research cannot be directly translated into executive education. No, you have to, you know, it's like you have to simplify and integrate with sight of others to like to build, you know, a conceptual toolkit that they can use for making decisions. No? It's like
Sure.
It's like, for instance, when you publish in the Harvard Business Review. No, it's like you cannot publish the same in the Harvard Business Review that you publish in SMJ. No, so it's like things like that. It's like yeah, perhaps it's the best way. No, if you think what will be the Harvard Business Review version of your research? That's what you teach in executive education.
That's right. I mean, my expertise area is area of expertise Italian firms. And when I first started working with Italian firms, maybe 15, 18 years ago, I was thinking about growth. How do we grow the firm? You know, trained in that fashion. But they were actually interested in survival, not growth at all.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, for instance, there are companies that doesn't want to grow. There are two types of companies that doesn't want to grow. First, family firms. Not all family firms, but some family firms do not want to grow. And maybe in Spain, if your turnover surpasses a certain threshold, you are under the scrutiny of a special unit of the tax office. So there are companies that want to be, but you know, the average company wants to grow because otherwise you are losing potential. And as I told you before, you either grow or you die. So the important thing is that, the interesting thing is that as most of the managers are interested, at least the managers that I've faced in my classes, most of these managers were interested in growing. You know, it's like, well, I could introduce my research in my classes.
Perfect. Last question. What's the question that I should have asked you but haven't?
Well, you could have asked me if I still have the same motivation as in the first day. No? If I still have the same motivation. And I will tell you, yes, I do. I do have the same motivation. The thing is that I do not dedicate so many hours to my job because obviously, you know, as you grow, you are more concerned with health issues. You have only one life to live. And you know, when I was doing my PhD, I was working, I don't know, 14 hours a day or things like that. It's like, but I think that on the other hand, I'm more productive right now. I have more knowledge about how to identify research gap, how to define the research questions, how to define the research settings. So yeah, I think that yeah, I have the hopes that, you know, as I told you before, my best work is yet to come. So well, time will tell.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
This was helpful.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.